Let me ask you something. What do you see here? Interesting. What about here and here? And maybe even here? If any of those answers was a perfectly offside or onside goal, then you only got 2 of those right. The rest of them were reproductive organs and butterflies. But the point is, lots of this stuff is subjective, and most of the time, VAR says something about you. Today, if you want to stick around on the channel and hear a little bit about yourself, you're welcome. Welcome back to Lawrence McKenna channel. It's good to have you guys. Liverpool lost away from home. The broad headline. Football, mistakes, these kind of things have happened before, right? Yes. But the way that you interpret the story and the way that you choose to tell the story definitely says a lot about what you wanted from the game. For instance, if you just contrast Liverpool in both of these, there was high expectation of what Liverpool were going to achieve in this match. There was a lot going into it because there was such high expectations around Liverpool, and this was probably Liverpool's biggest test, as I said in my video the other day. Broadly, they looked as if they were going to pass the test early on. They were doing the right kind of pressing, they were doing all the rest of the stuff, but subjectively, we'll never know, objectively, obviously, we'll never know whether Liverpool would have won the game. Subjectively, you can say, but objectively, you know that Liverpool didn't win this game. Literally, when the whistle blew at 90 minutes, or whatever minute it was, they lost. Whether that's legit or not is another thing. Spurs celebrated this, and you can see subjectively what it means to them. An objective win in a subjective fashion is something that Spurs are really trying to build, and this is half of football. The subjectivity of it is so interesting. Now, that is not me doing a Robbie Savage impression and saying everyone's opinion is valid, isn't it? It's like, he can say that Liverpool won, and I can say that Liverpool lost, and the great thing about football is we all have to agree. No. What I'm really saying is, the subjective elements of the game are what makes it interesting, but they are not what therefore defines it as the only interesting thing, and they are not only the interesting things. For instance, the very definitive thing is a Premier League title. A lot of teams have done that. A very definitive thing is a win. A lot of teams have done that. A very definitive thing is relegation. All of these relative things are decided by subjective ideas, right? Now, the subjective ideas happen within the 90 minutes of the game. The fixed parameters are blowing the whistle at the start, blowing the whistle for half time, starting the second half, all these kind of aspects. And very often those things are associated with a referee, someone who's there to impose some form of order on all the subjective stuff that goes on during the game. Broadly, they're seen as kind of the lawmakers, the people who are there to bring some sense of, how can I put it, like, I guess I want to say like discipline, but I don't mean that. So when you then see that there is a subjective, objective thing happening out in the field, there is an experience that you're having where it almost feels dreamlike as a Liverpool fan, and everyone else is either laughing at that or compounding that or saying, hey, well, that's just part of football. I broadly agree with that. All of these things are part of football. And in fact, VAR was brought in to lessen those things, not to completely get rid of them, though obviously that would be a long-term goal. How can we change that? Can we change it to make it 100% foolproof? Probably not, because there are always going to be humans involved. There are subjective things that happen within the game. And on top of that, can we really expect one referee out on the field, especially one referee out on the field who doesn't seem particularly linked into the game, to be able to bring all of that together? Let me show you another one of these things. What's this test called? Wait. It's called the Rorschach test. Rorschach test? Rorschach? Psychology students, get at me. What do you see here? And here? This is actually an advert for AFC. Sorry, Diogo Jota was actually sent off. I don't know if he was meant to do the celebration then or not. What do you see here? But then here? Broadly here, this is the interpretation of the rule. Now, VAR can check the footage in normal speed or in slow motion, but in general, slow motion replays should be only used for facts, e.g. position of offence player, point of contact for physical offences, and handball, ball out of play, blah, blah, blah. Normal speed should be used for intensity of an offence or to decide if it was a handball offence. Broadly here, what Liverpool is doing is appealing that. Now, I will take you back to another statement that Liverpool made the other day. Liverpool made a series of statements just the other day, and Liverpool made this statement the other day. Liverpool Football Club acknowledged PGMOL's admission of their failures last night. It is clear that the correct application of the laws of the game did not occur, resulting in sporting integrity being undermined. Now let's go back and talk about what sporting integrity means. Sporting integrity means that, say that you have any form of investment in the game, then the game is happening in a way which makes it a better competition, makes it a better spectacle, makes it fairer, makes it makes those subjective decisions feel closer to objective, and also means that people within the game can broadly not have their own perception of it undermined. Basically, the perception of the game should not be undermined. Something similar to this actually happened in the 90s, where after there was a big betting scandal uncovered in Serie A, a lot of people stopped betting in Serie A. There were loads of people who were basically just saying, hey, look, like Serie A is just not a good competition to bet on anymore because it's fixed in too many fashions. We can't rely on it, and therefore we can't rely on the betting outcomes. As one of the biggest leagues in the world, which I find it very hard to find how much money the Premier League had actually made in the last couple of years, but with so much money being funneled through, into and around the competition, you would think that they will put a modicum of investment into developing the right technology, not just developing technology, and also then that the technology continues to improve work and improve the game. Seems to me like the perception from the Premier League side is that they need to at least retain some face here. What they're trying to do is not have an absolute PR disaster on their hands, when actually they already have a PR disaster, and have to basically cycle a lot of the decisions that they made back, probably basically showing that they don't trust either some of their referees, some of the suppliers, or some of the people who operate the VAR, which then massively undermines the integrity of the game, at least to them. And also, they don't want to go through this period of pain in order to get to a period of betterment, improvement, any of those kind of things, right? And that's a real issue, because I think a lot of people at this point think, oh, Liverpool are calling for a replay of the game. I don't think Liverpool are calling for a replay of the game. What Liverpool are calling for is something that we as fans, and me as a individual, have been calling for quite some time. Higher amounts of transparency from the Premier League. More people being able to say, I understand why this decision was made, even if there was an error being made at that time, or there's an error being made in the moment, and therefore that can be adapted and corrected, because I understand and trust the people who are taking part in this. Now, the problem is this was also done in should we say, in conjunction with a number of other poor decisions in the same game. So within the same game, Curtis Jones, over here, as you go down here, was sent off for a decision which started looking like this, finished looking like this, and broadly, like, that's not great. That looks terrible as a still, but at the same time, if you show that as a still and the referee walks over to it, of course he's going to see that. If you do that, you probably don't think that the two men end up in this kind of position. And then the other one was Diogo Jota making a tackle, which we're not even sure is even really a tackle that he touches him. In fact, when Diogo Jota is sent off, he actually says the phrase, I didn't touch him. Anyway, the referee doesn't want to hear it at this point, and weirdly VAR and the referee have kind of lost control of the game, but also taken way too much control of the game to such an objective degree that the players no longer trust that things are being done in the right fashion, with the right goal of an outcome, of a good product to watch, a good game to watch, a good game of football, a succulent game of football, if you will. The point being, you can improve the VAR, and I get it, like Spurs fans should be happy with the win, but let me just be real here. Spurs fans and Spurs are almost the least relevant element of the entire thing here. Spurs fans, like, jamming a W on Liverpool fans, or jamming an L on Liverpool fans, isn't even nearly as important as the overall game and the Premier League putting out a good product. Like, I get it. Spurs won. Like, you can't take that back. Bear in mind, there was that story of Arsene Wenger offering, I think it was Steve Bruce, a win back in the day when I think Kanu put a goal in and he wasn't meant to because it was against the fairness in the game. Now, I don't expect Ange Postecoglou to do that. And in fact, I would actually say that I think it undermines the integrity of the game if you go for a replay after this, right? Or at least at this stage. If we have found that there is some form of corruption there and these referees have done something for a reason and, there was particular malpractice, even then, you're sort of going, well, how do we know whether this has happened in the past as well? We were never testing for it before. We were never looking for it before because we always just trusted that it was happening in the way it was meant to be happening. But a series of bad things have happened. In fact, to the degree where someone's actually gone away and looked at the examples of VAR that Howard Webb provided to the public a couple of months ago. And in each of those examples, it's confirmed whether it was a goal or not. Now, in the example with Luis Diaz just the other day, it was not confirmed whether it was a goal or not. It was just confirmed that it was onside, and therefore the on-pitch decision should remain. All of this was poor communication. All of this was not necessarily following the guidelines. And all of this was down to a series of human errors, not just one human error, that has now led to people like Darren England and probably Simon Hooper being suspended in the long run, and probably rightly so. If you can't do your job properly, then sure. But the point here goes wider than that, right? And this is what I think is really important. Humans are always going to be under pressure. The Liverpool players are under pressure to perform. The Spurs fans felt the pressure for the Spurs players, and the Spurs players were under pressure to perform. And, the managers have to manage that week in, week out. That is something where you've got someone to manage those people. In fact, red cards exist because the pressure of the game can sometimes overflow. Someone has to leave the pitch, right? And the same with the yellow card. It's basically saying, keep it within the lines here, boys. Otherwise, we're going to have to take you out of the system. The same goes for referees. But broadly, when the referees get punished, the actual system itself doesn't really get punished, right? The people at the top still make the profits. I mean, they might make less profits because they might lose a deal because of the integrity of the game. We can't tell about the butterfly effect of what is going on within the Premier League. Broadly, these pictures will have travelled around the world and people might want to see more of Liverpool throughout the season. In fact, what will be fascinating is to see Liverpool's reaction to this. I don't mean the club, I mean the players, right? What will broadly be interesting to see here is whether Jurgen Klopp chooses to capitalise on a situation like this and basically say to the world, like, yeah, we know we are an underdog in this situation. We know that something which feels unjust has happened against us. We can't go back and change that now, so we're going to have to change that in the future. Should Liverpool be lifting a Premier League trophy at the end of the season? I'm not saying they are. Should they lift the trophy at the end of the season? This will be something they look back on and love. Or at least, I don't know, like smile, maybe mildly. Riesen grinsen. Anyway, the point is, you can't get to a point with the Premier League where you just keep saying, like, hey, we're going to make a series of disingenuous claims around Liverpool here. I don't think many Liverpool fans are saying legitimately, I don't think even Liverpool are saying legitimately that we should replay a match based on what happened here. But what they are doing is putting pressure, subjective pressure, on people who make the objective decisions and saying to them, the objective decisions put way too much pressure on those people who were probably then not primed to make those high pressure decisions. And the system is not doing anything about it. Saying sorry is not enough. Because if you miss out on the Champions League by a point come the end of the season, or 3 points or 2 points, that's millions of pounds. Now, that's not for me to say like, hey, we know the referee's got a huge amount of pressure there, but it's worth just putting it in context. The reason the pressure exists is not just because of your entertainment. The reason the pressure exists is not just because we think it's funny that Liverpool get dunked on and that, Spurs get a win, or that Manchester United had that Onana situation a couple of weeks ago, or that a couple of years ago there was that post-game penalty where really the reason they had the post-game penalty was due to something to do with it being flagged within the 90 minutes. And there's a whole series of like, hey, the rules have changed since back in the day. We can't really compare this to old things. But it all says something about you, right? The willingness to work and find a solution to this reflects on the game and where we're at the moment. The willingness and the solution to find that solution is not going to be on Twitter. It may be on YouTube. There are a lot of people farming clicks off it right now, basically pretending to be sympathetic with Liverpool fans when they're actually not even fans of Liverpool, or are basically just trying to make money and get followers. It's kind of bizarre. That's not Mark Goldbridge, by the way. I actually think Mark is one of the few people who actually operates with a level of integrity within the football community. Anyway, my point is broadly this. The system needs massive reform, and all fans should be standing together to reform it. Some people saying things like, Liverpool fans wouldn't be saying this if they'd won the game. I get it. Like, I'm sure there will be some banter from the other way as well. But at the same time, if you don't speak about this now, there will be a bad VAR decision that possibly gets your team relegated, that possibly loses you the Champions League, that possibly loses out on you making it into the Champions League and lose your club millions of pounds, therefore possibly losing out on some of your enjoyment. The final thing I will say is this. What I find interesting about the whole thing is that most people seem to be in different camps. One camp is it's about the winning and the losing that really matters. Liverpool deserve to either win this game, score the goal, or do whatever it was. And that's one aspect. That's one of these Ross tests or whatever it is, right? The other one, the other approach takes into account the fact that this game is subjective, is about the experience. So, of course, it's easier, and I'm sure it's much easier, to enjoy your team sitting comfortably in the Champions League, playing week in, week out, or playing the Europa League, or wherever it is, than it is to watch your team struggle to results and watching, feeling your relationship to that as a fan impacting your own day, those kind of things. Like, obviously, you get over that in time, but you kind of get my point here. Like, there are a lot of people out there who kind of have an identity that seems intrinsically linked to the club. If your club loses, you feel sad. If your club wins, you feel happy. Of course, you want your club to do better on the other side of that. That is subjective. That isn't about just winning and losing. That is about, hey, if we don't make the Champions League here, I don't feel like I'm going to be as happy. Football is about the journey. And I'm sure for that very reason that all of this like very literal kind of, hey, it's all about these rules and we need to work out exactly what the rules are not going to save us here. What's going to save us is our approach to the game. What would have made the game easier between Liverpool and Spurs the other day was, frankly, a different approach towards refs. Frankly, and I'm not saying therefore, referees at the 10th division get more abuse because of teams like yours who abuse the ref. I don't know how true that is or untrue it is. What I'm saying is, basically, if our approach changes to the game, and I get it, like, half the entertainment is that it's high stakes, right? So there's obviously some people enjoy high stakes and they enjoy, the betting, gambling type feeling that they get from it. The moment of enjoyment, the rush that you get is because it's so high stakes. The reason that I was so happy when that goal went in from Luis Diaz was because I was like, this is really, part of Liverpool's season hinges on this. But what's interesting is, and here's what's fascinating about it, right? If that was back in the day before VAR, that's just an offside. It's just an on-field offside that then possibly Liverpool just go on and lose the game anyway. We experience it completely differently to now when we have these, we wouldn't have even drawn the lines on back in the day. We've just gone here, he just looks offside. He's possibly offside, maybe he is, maybe he isn't. Genuinely, TV used to do that. Up to like a couple of years ago where we just went, it could be onside. But what that's calling for, basically, and what a lot of this is coming down to is if we are going to implement VAR and we are going to keep it in the game, which I think is it's just a genuine need at this point. Like, people are just saying technology is going to be evolved, just get used to it. It has to improve and it has to be willing to change throughout the season. There has to be automatic or semi-automatic offside decisions, which are then triggered and, give the referee a notification here or, give some sort of in-stadium indication. There are other ideas around how long it should take, whether there should be a time limit on how long it should take, whether we should actually be hearing open comms on at least the broadcast, if not inside the stadium. Like, why, with the budgets that the Premier League have, cannot this be done? That wasn't English. It was English, but I don't understand what construction it was. And my point is broadly, like, VAR needs to improve. I get it. Like, I know that we probably have deals in place with technology providing companies. That's fine. Part of those deals, if you're the Premier League, has to be, we need to retain sporting integrity throughout this experience. And if you're not willing to offer that, we can no longer work with you. Now, that might also come down to referee training. That might also come down to the fact that the referees were halfway around the world only 48 hours before this match. By the way, the fact that we're worried about how tired the referees are, but barely ever worried about how tired the players are, is utterly bizarre. But still, the fact that we bring it up is kind of weird. But they were in another country doing some refereeing, which some people believe may have prejudiced their decisions, or some people believe may have just made them too tired to do the game. And I think that's a little off. So broadly, it goes like this. If you are willing to think about the game, if you can think in the long term rather than in the short term, if you can think in terms of the betterment of football, absolutely. It doesn't take away from Spurs winning the game or Liverpool losing the game. Maybe it takes away from Liverpool losing the game. Weirdly, like, Liverpool still come away and they feel like this was a bit of a null and void result. Does that make sense? I mean, it wasn't null and void, but it feels like, emotionally, the momentum maybe still remains with Liverpool, if not is now added to by Liverpool, purely because of the fact that they did do something in this game that warranted reward and they didn't get that reward. Part of football has to be, if you put in the energy and you put in the work, you have to show, and this is part of my approach, that people get a reward, right? Broadly, it comes down to how you treat other people, how you approach other people, how you feel about the rest of the world. Now, it can be that how you feel about your team is incredibly passionate. It can be that how you feel about your team is, I love Spurs and I hate Liverpool and I'm just kind of happy this happened to them. That's okay. It means you probably will be biased in this debate, which I'm probably biased in, but we all are. So therefore your contribution won't really be the same, but it's still interesting to hear your take. But what I'm saying is, broadly, is what you take away from it. And objectively, I think what we all want is for the game to get better. The real difference between all of this is what the Premier League thinks is better, what Liverpool think is better, and what the fans think are better are all three different things. And so we're all operating going to three different goals. Final thing I just want to address here, and I'm kind of interested to know in the comments below. What do you think this means for something like the Super League? Because in a Super League where Liverpool have a level of investment, where Liverpool have an element of control, they can go back and say, hey, we run this. Like, we have taken an element of responsibility, but also we want to fix this properly. This is a Super League. There's something crazy. I think this makes a case, not a good one, but Liverpool and other teams could use that it makes a case against staying in something like the Premier League and against this kind of faceless corporation that Liverpool obviously make lots of money through, but always going down that route of like, right, well, the league said it, so we have to do it. It's kind of adding a cumulative element of like, well, if we ran the league, we could, make our own rules. We could work out how this would be decided if, a bad decision was come to. But broadly, it's about sporting integrity. If we questioned every time that someone made a wrong decision and said, we're going to sue you, or we're going to do this or that, or, this is going to impact us to a huge degree, that takes away from the entertainment element. It takes away from the rest of it, right? So I'm interested to see what you guys think about that. Like, we can't just go around saying we just want to replay every time that we're not happy with the decision. That's different to its decision being clearly wrong and slipping through the cracks at so many levels to the point where it feels unfair, unjust, or wrong. And with these stopgaps, no one's saying that therefore that we should go back and replay something or offer Liverpool a penalty or whatever it is, because it was a legit goal. It really should just stand as a goal. But the point, that's a joke. The point is, you can't just walk around going, okay, right, replay that because we weren't happy here. Replay that because we weren't happy here. It kind of goes back to the similar thing with everything around Man City's charges right now, right? It's all well and good saying, it's all well and good going back years later and going, you won the league now because Man City potentially cheated or, were found to do wrongdoing. Not that I'm saying they did. Those fans go, okay, but my granddad was alive then, he's not alive now. I can't really celebrate with him. Or I don't really want a retrospective win. I want a win in that moment. The moment in football is just as key. The moment of celebration, the trip you take with your parents or the trip you take with your friends or the trip you take on your own to a stadium is what's important. The in-stadium experience, the at-home with your parents, the at-home with whoever it is. You can tell my parents are very important to me at this point. I want to share experiences with them in life. You get what I'm saying, right? And obviously I'm a father. I want to share those experiences with my son. That, while you're busy dunking on everyone else, is a huge factor for me. So I'd love to know what you guys think. I'd love to know what your approach is, what you hear, what you see, what you think is important in this particular situation. My humble opinion is improve the process, improve VAR, but move on. It might feel difficult, but we cannot undermine the game, and the game must remain the most important aspect at all times, because ultimately the game is what gives me and you the pleasure. My thing is this. Previous seasons, we've seen Liverpool have balloons come out in the field. Weirdly, that went on to impact Liverpool's season massively. Like, Liverpool ended up feeling, and I know a lot of people say always the victims, but Liverpool felt like the victims of a sense of injustice around that, right? There were also elements in previous seasons where, other refs got stuff wrong for other people. What I'm saying is, without VAR, without the level of attention, without this level of, we need to apply the rules completely correctly, and I get it, we do, but without that kind of focus on that, I feel like this probably slips through the cracks a little easier. And if it was the other way around, I probably wouldn't feel thrilled that Liverpool had won the game in that fashion. It feels like there might be some kind of down the road, reversal coming. Broadly, Spurs fans were saying things like, well, you've had it in the Champions League final this year. Yeah, we absolutely trounced you that year, mate, so just wind your neck in. But broadly, it's about these. How do you see it? What do you see? What's important to you? What are you focusing on? And this seems to be a really good way of judging where people are at. Appreciate you guys. Much love. See you later.